Yeah.
That's very cool.
I think one of the coolest things they do is they have like a retreat only for women that they go.
Oh, that's
It's
awesome.
a really cool organization.
Yeah, sounds like it. We had somebody earlier say that when someone used the term wilderness, that she just thought they meant like outside. Forget it. You have to like laugh when she said it because it was funny, but she didn't realize how funny it was.
Recording, it's good, it's good, it's good. I think we are good to go.
Yeah, we're good to go.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. We're at 6:02. Do you want us to get started? You want to wait any longer? Anybody else or? Okay.
Oh, yeah, sorry. You can just that tab right there. And then
Well, then you use the same platform, right? When you guys did yours. It's pretty cool. Really like it.
Yeah, it was kind of the one I saw a lot because of, especially with the voting and the charting that you can do was the one I saw that happened. It's like 1 through 9 charting.
Yeah. We're not using that today, but it is a cool function.
The average stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So
to interpretation.
This.
oh, sure. So should I launch it?
Just give me a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I think first thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and get our language interpreter up and running. My name's Tom Sluice. I'm the city spokesman as well as the administrative lead on this project for the city. And I am working with Rachel at Visit Durango as well as JLL on this project. So tonight, we had earlier some stakeholder groups, and this is really just a public forum for anybody to raise really any questions or observations on the city's plan that we're creating, which is a destination management master plan, which will inform our sustainable tourism marketing efforts essentially for the next 10 years. So with that in mind, Diego, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for the language announcement, and then we can get this going.
Sounds good. Thank you, Tom. Good evening, everyone. I'm Diego Ponce. I'm going to keep my camera off since it's glitching, but I'm here today with my colleague Valentina on behalf of the Community Language Cooperative, the CLC. Thanks as always for having us at your meeting. The organizers of the meeting continue making a commitment towards language justice. So all this means is that we're here to create a space for people to participate and engage in the language of their heart, just simply the language that you feel most comfortable in. We're going to use simultaneous interpretation here on Zoom to help create the space in English and in Spanish. And once I finish saying this in English, I'll repeat the instructions in the Spanish. We start the interpretation at that moment. And once interpretation is on, you'll be able to see that globe icon that says interpretation there in the bottom right-hand corner of your computer screen. We'll ask you to please select that globe icon when it appears on your screen, and please select your preferred language. If you happen to be joining today's meeting on your cell phone or your tablet, I'll instead ask you to please look for the more button or the 3 dots button in order to select your preferred language that way. So if you're not fully bilingual, we'll encourage you to select your preferred language so you may utilize the interpretation if someone were to speak in the opposite language. If you are bilingual, then you can just feel free to listen to everyone in the original language. And once you select your language, you can always check in your original audio so you don't have to be hearing both languages at the same time. As always, we like to remind all people, just please pay attention to the speed in which you're speaking. Just please make sure that you're speaking at a conversational pace, and please make sure that you do not pick up your reading speed. So thank you so much for that. Buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Mi nombre es Diego Pons y estoy aquí hoy con mi colega Valentina de parte de la Cooperativa Comunitaria de la Justicia del Lenguaje, CLC. Y como siempre, gracias por invitarnos hoy a su reunión. Los organizadores de esta reunión se han comprometido hoy a servir la justicia del lenguaje. Lo que eso significa es que queremos crear un espacio para que todas las personas puedan participar e involucrarse en el idioma de su corazón, simplemente el idioma en el que todas las personas se sientan más cómodas. Vamos a continuar hoy utilizando la interpretación simultánea aquí en Zoom para poder crear ese espacio en inglés y en español. Cuando yo termine de decir esto, vamos a activar la interpretación. Ya cuando se activa la interpretación, usted va a poder observar un icono de un globo de la Tierra que dirá interpretación. Ahí abajo en la derecha de su pantalla, le vamos a pedir que por favor seleccione ese icono del globo terráqueo cuando aparezca en su pantalla y por favor seleccione su idioma preferido. Pero si usted está asistiendo hoy a esa reunión en su celular o en su tableta, le vamos a pedir que por favor, en vez de hacer eso, busque la opción que dice More, que quiere decir más, o posiblemente el botón de 3 puntos para que pueda seleccionar su idioma preferido de esa manera. Si usted no es completamente bilingüe, le vamos a aconsejar a que por favor seleccione su idioma preferido para que pueda utilizar la interpretación hoy cuando alguien esté hablando en el otro idioma. Si usted sí es bilingüe, entonces ahí se puede sentir libre de escuchar a todos en su idioma original. Y como siempre, cuando usted seleccione su idioma, puede hacer clic en silenciar el audio original para no escuchar a ambos idiomas al mismo tiempo. Muchas gracias.
All right, let me do one more quick thing, and then I'll turn it over to you. Okay, good. Thank you.
Good to go? Great. Thank you, Tom. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. I really appreciate it. My name is Bethany DeRose. I'm Senior Vice President with JLL's Tourism and Destination Advisory Practice. We specialize in tourism and destination-related strategic plans, master plans, destination development-related work. We've done work in large cities. We've done work in very rural, small communities. We've done work and have an alliance with the World Travel and Tourism Council and are highly focused on creating destination plans that drive action, give communities tangible results, and ultimately provide, as Tom mentioned earlier, a roadmap for success to find balance across tourism destinations. So I really want to thank you all for carving out some time this evening to join us here tonight. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Shereen, and allow her to introduce herself, and then we'll get started with our discussion.
Hi everyone, I'm Shereen Jafari. I'm the Vice President of Tourism and Destination Advisory with JLL, and thank you so much for your time and your interest in being here. I know it's snowing, so thank you so much for coming this time out of your day. Do you want to do some introductions?
Yeah, so Tom, can we have everybody introduce themselves? Is that
It's up to you. Sure.
cool with those?
Yeah.
So if it's all right with everybody, since you're here, it'd be great to just have a name and maybe if you represent an organization or if you're just here as a concerned resident, whatever the foundation is for you to be here, we're happy to know it. So I'll start right here.
My name is Sam Foster, and I'm a retired Forest Service scientist and research manager, and happy to be here.
Great, thank you.
Sure, I'm Waylon Ryan. I am, so full transparency, I'm with Visit Durango. I'm sustainability and policy manager, but I'm also a resident of LaPlata County, born and raised. I lived in Durango, but born and raised here, so it's just, yeah, I have a deep rooted love of this place.
Yeah, my name is Alex Widow, just a concerned citizen here today.
Great.
Charles Niemeyer, my concerned citizen of Durango.
Great. Great.
Guilty said here as our concerned citizen, also running for this next city council.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. We really appreciate it. So what we wanted to do today is use this time to get your input. We have some fun technology we're going to try. So if you're up for it, you can follow along with this QR code. Otherwise, no pressure. We can just have a conversation. So we'll go to the next slide. So just a quick background about our process. So we have a 4-phase process for the destination management master plan development. As Tom mentioned, we are really in the middle of phase 2, and we're running phase 1 and phase 2 in parallel together. So we got started really back in December with our first task force meeting. So we've had we've worked with the city and with Tom and with Rachel at Visit Durango to get onboarded ourselves, as well as have a task force assembled that is part of really vetting what we're working on. So there's, I think, 20 members of that task force that represent different stakeholder groups across the community and across the industry. And that task force will be meeting throughout this process. Additionally, we're obviously here in market this week to continue to listen and learn and get feedback from folks like yourselves. We've had focus groups all day today. There'll be additional focus groups tomorrow, and we'll have additional meetings and one-on-one conversations over the coming weeks. So really phase 1 is focused all about listening and learning and making sure we're getting as much input as possible into this. And although it says it's phase 1, it sort of doesn't stop. We're happy to receive input throughout the engagement. Phase 2 is where we spend the bulk of our time in the market research effort. So we're spending a lot of time, effort, and energy researching both Durango as well as competitive and comparable destinations, ski towns, mountain towns, resort areas, communities that are growing, and what are those pros and cons and pushes and pulls on the destination, and what can we learn from those. Phase 3 is where we're trying to put these things together. So what have we heard from stakeholder input and folks like yourselves? What have we learned from the research efforts, and where is there alignment? Where does that give us guidance and direction on future strategy? Phase 4, ultimately, we want to create a management master plan that gives good guidance and clear direction. And it's something that, as I mentioned before, we can take action on, and that the city can feel comfortable and confident, and stakeholders can feel comfortable and confident that it will be a guiding roadmap for the next years. So in a nutshell, that's our 4-phase process. If we go to the next one, I just sort of alluded to some of this, but we're running phase 1 and phase 2 in parallel. We're getting input and having conversations like this now, and continuing to have individual interviews. If there are people that that should be in these seats tonight, and you're like, oh man, I think they couldn't make it, don't hesitate to give us their contact information. We're happy to have follow-up discussions. We want to make sure there's enough input into this process. As I mentioned in phase 2, these are just some of the elements we wanted to highlight that are included in phase 2. We have a destination or tourism readiness index that we've created in conjunction with the World Travel and Tourism Council. It is on its 2nd iteration. We just published the updated version in April of 2022 at their global summit. And this destination readiness index is something we're doing for Durango. It takes a comprehensive look at 75 different indicators across the destination economy. So what affects tourism, what affects things like infrastructure or workforce and housing. So we are not looking at just hotel rooms and occupancy and ADR. We're looking at the things that push and pull on the industry, as well as the community that the industry sits within. So we are looking at the destination across 75 different indicators and 8 different categories. So those 8 categories are pillars of what we consider to be paramount to destination planning. So we group things. For example, we have a pillar for scale, which is really about size. So that's quantity of inventory and things like that. We use concentration. So are we seeing density or pockets of density in certain parts of the destination? Maybe that's seasonally, maybe that's consistently throughout the year. Those 8 pillars go all the way through to environmental readiness and urban readiness and infrastructure, and policy being potentially one of the biggest categories when we think about destination strategy, but people don't always necessarily think about planning for future policy. And we want to look at policy that allows the destination to have success, and how we define success as a community here today. And through this process, will help guide those directions, those outcomes. So the Tourism Readiness Index is a big part of what we're doing. It says complete up there. The data gathering is complete, but the next line, it says outcomes and analysis, that is underway. So we've gathered all of the information. We're now working on the interpretation of that data and what those outcomes are. One other piece I wanted to highlight here in phase 2 is the economic impact study and the quality of life study. So as part of our submittal to the city to come do this work for Durango, we brought on a partner in tourism economics. They are a global firm, incredibly well-respected group of economists who are working with us and will be folded into this process, and they will be developing the economic impact work, and part of that additionally, a quality of life analysis on what does tourism mean to the destination and what could or should it mean going forward. So we'll be folding in their work. We're making sure that we have the most current information for those two parts of the studies. So the 2022 year-end data is really just becoming available now. So their work is really just getting started. So over the next 6-8 weeks, they'll be working with us in tandem on wanting to pull out that economic impact as well as this quality of life component. So stay tuned for that. There'll be more to come on those outputs. So if we go to the next piece here, we had a couple of questions that we wanted to start with the probe for conversation. So the way this works, if you want to follow along with our fun technology, if you scan the QR code with your phone or put in that JLL tourism URL that you see on the screen, you can actually type your responses and they'll pop up and we can use them for discussion. You don't have to do it, but it allows us to maybe keep track of some responses. It does ask you for your contact information when you log in. It's not going to show up on the screen. We won't be using it later. It's just so that it is the gateway to let you into the JLL platform. So when you think about Durango, and several of you said that you're here as members of the public and not necessarily in the industry. So what do you love about Durango? What are the things that you want to make sure, knowing that we're going through this process, that we're cognizant of, that we're paying attention to the things that you as residents and members of this community love and want to make sure stay intact as part of the future?
Bethany, just real quick, everybody, I'm trying to apologize for anything. Just so we can have the translators here. You don't mind if you have a question, if you either come up here and say it at the microphone so we can get it translated, it'd be great. Or if you don't want to, that's fine.
I can repeat it if you want me to. I'm happy to. Sure. Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Tom. So it looks like some people are typing, but anybody want to shout out an answer? What do you look? Are the things that you care about and you want to make sure we're thinking about? Yeah.
We came here for the environment,
Mhm.
for the town, the historic community. Excuse me, the college, the medical stuff, so that mix, that really unique mix. Because of my background in forestry and so on, environmental issues, we love the mountains.
Yep.
We love this environment and we don't want it to be loved to death.
Yep.
We've been to places like Yosemite and
Yep.
Great Smoky Mountain National Park. We don't want to end up like that.
Yeah, so your comment, just make sure it was captured, has to do with the environment, the natural resource, and why you chose to move to Durango, really because of the natural assets and wanting to take care and preserve and be good stewards of those so that they aren't, that those natural resources are not deteriorated over time.
But also the mix of the college
Yeah.
and the healthcare and kind of the old west character of the town. So it's all kind of blended together.
Yeah, so having those resources that a community of our size has, which is have that college injection of youth and young people coming through, and as well as the healthcare system being strong enough is something that you were really looking for. So 2 additional great things in addition to our natural resources. Others?
Yeah, I love how climate forward Durango is.
Sure.
And yeah, I don't know, I really love that aspect of the organizations working on it, the goals, all of them not as ambitious as it could be are really great.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I love that about Durango.
So not just the fact that we have natural resources, but we have organizations that are proactive on the climate side, on the environmental side?
Yeah, and the organization specifically, just overall, the whole ecosystem here.
Yeah.
Whether it's the city or the organizations, the citizens, and communities in this area that are focused and taking action on climate is
Pushing that forward.
amazing.
That's great. It's great to hear. Other thoughts? Things we love? I'm sure that can't be it. I've heard the food's really good. Yeah, see some heads on. What, anything else?
There's always been a nice blend of city-like amenities,
Okay.
restaurants, access to those kind of things. There's also always been a really nice. Pockets. Right? So
Okay,
you can be on Main Street and do, and be on the grid.
yeah, so two things that you just mentioned. The first was sort of the amenities, maybe what feels like would be bigger city amenities. And the second, being able to leave those amenities real quick and be off the grid and whether that's be in nature or just find quiet and find space, that there's space to do that. Yeah,
If I might, third, like the connection of having both in one place.
yeah. That proximity of to those amenities, but also accessibility to and from to get in and out. Yeah, that's great. Other thoughts?
Another one that we really find fascinating is how close we are to Native American resources. For example, Mesa Verde
Mhm.
National Park.
Mhm.
And then if you go south from here, Aztec ruins, and just a lot of really interesting cultural
Yep.
things here.
Yeah, so that access and proximity to heritage, history, and culture. Okay.
Silverton,
Yep.
actually the old mining town,
Mhm.
45 minutes away.
Yep. That's great. Any others? Yeah.
Just like the sense of community and trust overall.
Yeah.
And
Support.
just, yeah, just knowing every neighbor and being able to leave the door unlocked and not worry about anything.
So this sense of community, but also that there's sort of safety in neighbors and, you know, and having that small town feel.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's great. Any others?
A lot of art and artists.
Culture, art and culture. Yeah. That's great. Okay. All right, let's go to the
Great weather.
weather. I know, I'm hoping to see a little few more inches tomorrow. Excited. We'll move to the next one. I'm sure there's more. We can come back to the what we love part. Thinking about the fact that we're going through this destination management master plan, and Tom mentioned this in his opening comments, about sustainable tourism marketing and how it will drive what we do with those dollars and what we do with those resources. What are the priorities that maybe you have thinking about this plan and this effort, this undertaking? Are there accomplishments? Whether that be distant or aspirational, are there priorities that you have now that you know that we're going through this process, so that we're thinking about these things?
Is growth the ultimate goal, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't
Great
think,
question.
that's, but my priority or accomplishment would be like not growing,
Yeah. So I see some heads nodding, but just to make sure that we captured it, that, is growth what we're trying to do? Is that something that we are striving for? And I think that's a fair question to ask.
I'm curious as to, with the threat of the gaming booths coming here, will there be enough tourists to come into the regular future to keep the economy going?
Sure, so if we have retirees moving in, is that going to sustain our population over time? Is that part of your question? That if are we backfilling with tourism to try and keep people coming?
Yes, is there going to be long term, will there be enough tourists come here to keep the economy?
Good question. So where does growth and who are we trying to grow with, or if we're trying to grow it all, what's the market to sustain what we have or what we want to strive for balance? Okay. Other priority?
I like that notion of balance too, and I'll offer up it as an example. Personally, I don't want us to turn into an Aspen
Mhm.
or a Vail or something like that.
Mhm.
But it's such a nice thing here that Durango's approachable.
Right.
You don't have to be a multimillionaire to move there.
Yep.
Telluride is another interesting example. Of maybe they've gone a bit too far. So I think Durango, we're not so far that we can't keep it nice.
Mhm.
And back to the issue about how do we survive here locally, not just on tourism, but we need there seems to be a growing body of younger folks that come here that can do, work at home,
Mhm.
work in place. But their jobs, their companies may be in Texas or California, New York City, one of my good friends, that's where he works out of, but he lives here.
Mhm.
So it's kind of it's an optimization, that's the word.
Yeah, it's a great
Really
word.
an optimization.
Absolutely. So I think the point of one of the points that you were making is how do we maintain character and authenticity if we are experiencing growth in the interest of others that are seeking out our. So I think that's one part. I think the other part that you've said is tied to how do we manage growth? And we talked a little bit in different groups earlier today about policy. And it's, not fun as policy sounds, but sometimes, as we think about recommendations and where this plan could take impact, as it's a city's plan, what policies could be put in place to help manage growth or find that balance or find that optimization. So it's a great point. Yeah.
We did the other priority.
Yeah, so the need to make sure that we don't erode community. We've seen destinations and cities and counties and places where they haven't managed that inventory. And the inventory has allowed neighborhoods to become ghost towns, and they're just trying to root for visitation. So how do we make sure that maybe if that's a goal that we obviously don't want to achieve, what the example that has been set. So how do we manage that? Again, could that be policy driven? What kind of recommendations related to managing inventory? And so yeah, great point.
An ecosystem with just affordable housing in general.
Yeah. So that's come up a lot already, is this notion of what is short-term rental inventory due to housing, but then also, are we already underhoused? So what type of affordable housing, workforce housing do we need to sustain not just the tourism industry, but our workforce who's here, lives and works?
Yeah, big topic for sure.
Yeah, big topic.
Another point I want to add is, here we go, this is a lot more than tracking carbon output, but just in general, like having some sort of responsibility as a tourism destination. I mean, it's such a heavy hit of these emissions. One, like we are the cause of it, more or less. And so what are we doing on our end to track and hold people accountable for that, hold ourselves accountable?
Sure.
Like thinking, infrastructure, like we need to have, more EV chargers as an easy example, but like really we should be tracking any visitor who comes here and their individual impact in this area.
Yeah.
And offsetting that or, making
Well, I think,
progress.
tracking it is one thing, right? But what do we do to offset is the other point. So, we're having conversations in other destinations about net positive real estate. So how do you make real estate net positive? And also make it fiscally make sense? Because, this whole notion of, making these investments, that it's not always an enticing investment for the private sector. So there's public sector involvement, one that might be driven by policy, but two, do we make it so future investment, future development is looking at net positive real estate? So when the visitor comes and they're having that impact, maybe we're tracking, we're offset, we're trying to minimize their impact, and that they're trying to minimize their impact with us. But also then two, how do building initiatives play a role? Yeah.
And yeah, I submitted that one, but like in addition to just tracking the carbon output here, but how they get here. So if we're getting someone from, let's just say China, what's their input getting from China to here versus somebody from, say, Washington to here?
Yeah.
What's that look like, tracking that chain, see what we're doing to bring people here? Does economically one target another make more sense?
Yeah,
Kind of going along the same focus area. Again, one of the reasons most of us want to live here is because the environment we live in is surrounding us in every direction. And attracting outdoor activities and the use of the land at an appropriate level to maintain that environment,
Yep.
environmental aspects.
Yep.
No Disneyland,
Yep.
no Six Flags over Georgia.
Mhm.
This is about being outside,
Yep.
hiking and fishing, and, rafting and skiing and all that sort of thing without, just getting out, in your four-wheeler everywhere and digging up all the ditches and, whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things there, and there's some comments on the screen that are under this theme, but education of the visitor. We talked earlier in a couple of different groups about education for purposes of their etiquette and behavior. You mentioned this a second ago about, who are we trying to bring here? We talked about carbon output, but also from a behavior standpoint, we want people that match our culture and our values, right? So if we're saying come to Durango because of what we have, we want them to respect what we have too. So we need to find that visitor, and maybe the visitor just needs some education too about how to be a good steward. You used the word steward earlier, I think it's a great point, that how do we find the right visitor who's interested in what we have to offer, but also wants to take care of it the way we want to take care of it. So those are all good. We see the word balance up here, balance among a livable place, historic character, drawing a reasonable number of tourists, but not too many. So back to the earlier point of, is growth the goal? I don't know that growth is the goal, given the fact that the title of the plan is Destination Management Master Plan. We're probably not talking about a tourism development strategy. Those would be different things. So I think we are looking at how we manage growth, and what does that mean going forward. And so again, we're still at the front end of this, so we don't have any answers today, but I think that's part of what we're trying to seek, is what is management of that growth and that industry look like.
Yeah, it just comes off, at least from an outside perspective, that like the economic aspect of this is very heavy and
Sure.
driving a lot of the conversation. That just seems like we're trying to make more money and not really.
Right. So at what cost, I think is your point too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good one. Careful throttling of the influx of tourists. Yep, being very thoughtful and careful about how we invite people into our homes. Absolutely. A factor in negatively impacting affordable housing. So we've sort of touched on it already, but it's a great point. It's definitely been a theme throughout all of our conversations thus far. Western landscape, the Native American and ranching heritage and modern culture need to enhance that culture. So I think, part of what we talked about in some of our earlier focus groups is, who is the visitor today and what are they interested in? And I'm not reflecting negatively on any of the prior marketing, but I'm just thinking about going forward is the go forward marketing strategy more targeted to who the audience that really fits Durango versus trying to raise awareness of Durango. So we might be talking specifically to a outdoor enthusiast or a cultural traveler, or somebody who's only interested in Western heritage or Native American heritage. And how do we speak to those audiences because they match what we have to offer? So I think those are great comments. So infrastructure, implementing green infrastructure, that's a good one. Are there other things that, this is great, we're capturing all of these comments, so it's really helpful to have everybody provide that input.
I'm gonna pop up another one also, and that is the Durango Silverton Railway.
Okay.
And apparently that's one of the biggest draws that we have locally, and it's really quite unique.
Yeah.
And not that many places in America that have something like this.
So that you think is a strength of ours?
Absolutely
Yeah.
strength, and it ties into Silverton.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it has that really rustic kind of mountain, you know, it's almost at 10,000 feet. You know, so people get to ride all the way up
Yeah.
and spend a few hours there or out all the way down. You know, that's really
Great.
I respect that. I personally.
For the train. Okay.
I respect it, yeah, but I know some people do, yeah. Disagree.
Yeah.
Yes, my point of view.
Sure, of course, of course. Okay, maybe we'll go to the next one. I think we're only at 5, so don't worry. So we've kind of talked a little bit about this and some of the themes that have come up in our priorities, but let's say that everybody in this room, we had 100% community consensus. Everyone loved what we were doing, whatever it is. I don't know what those outcomes are yet. And this room had the power and the authority and the budget to implement this plan. What are the challenges to that plan being successful? Are there things that come to mind where you say, are we going to be able to do X, Y, and Z coming out of this? Somebody said to us earlier in one of our focus groups, actually, I think this comment came up more than once, that they told us all about the 15 or so different plans that they've been, planning committees that they've been part of over the last several years, and they don't want to be part of another one. So if we think about trying to implement successfully, what are the hurdles to being successful there? Okay.
We might not be able to impact the housing situation, you know, or like be able to stop it without being like, I don't know, maybe that's more of a worry than a challenge.
Sure,
I
sure.
just feel like it's a challenge, is that it's a big challenge.
That's a real concern.
Yeah, and it's gonna be really tough to deal with, even if we do the right things.
Yeah, that's a great point.
The one thing that might impact implementing your studies and plans and studies could be, there's a lot of burnout in the community. City of Durango forced us to study. I think that would be a major point of contention for me. Sure. To come up with some kind of slogan or something to not turn people off.
Yeah. So another concern or challenge being that there's been studies done, right? Maybe we're a little tired of studies. I get that concern. What we want to be able to do is hear from the community, from stakeholders, from the industry, so that we can align those thoughts, feelings, and opportunities. And then see, you know, there's been other studies before. Maybe they were good ideas with the wrong time. So maybe we can find some alignment in how we move those things forward using this plan. So does this plan allow for more, you know, potentially for other things to maybe get done as well? And not just be a plan that sits on the shelf. Yeah. So we see traffic up here, water usage, infrastructure and policy, housing policy, housing crisis. So housing, obviously a huge issue. Let's talk about traffic for a second. Let's talk about traffic. The opportunity to think about capacity building, if we're trying to manage growth, not just growth for growth's sake, but capacity building. Is traffic a problem because we have too many people and too many cars on the road? Or do we not have the infrastructure to support what's here?
I think it's twofold.
Okay.
Yes, at the moment, we have too many people pushing our roads. And infrastructure just the way that roads and our current infrastructure makes it very difficult. The part is the geographic constraints. Valley, yeah, where you go.
Right.
Okay.
So there is an infrastructure issue because where we've been built is that we don't have capacity for additional traffic, so we face traffic and congestion concerns. Is there, from your perspective, are there opportunities to think about what is the future parking strategy? Or, you know, is there an appetite to talk about parking strategy or transportation solutions that maybe get people out of their cars and off the road? That's something that you think the community would be interested in?
Yes, part of the issue is that historically growing up here, Bayfield did not have a lot of economic opportunities. So most county was driving in, still today, most of the county drives in. To Bayfield or surrounding areas to work. And then because there's just no job opportunities and then it drives home, some of that is sort of work opportunities, but still when you have a majority of the population having to drive in, that causes just extra congestion issues that on top of, you know, maybe no residents or whoever that doesn't want to, you know, drive or walk or bike when they're in town, they would just rather drive those couple miles. That's an education opportunity.
Yeah.
But I think it's multifaceted.
Yeah.
We have what I would term kind of a rudimentary, that's too pejorative. A basic structure of a bus system, so public transportation.
Yep.
But it's not sufficient. We need better public transportation in the city, in the county, in the region, and then the airport. I mean, all of that needs to be worked together.
Yep.
I go to Europe quite a bit, and you know, compare us to someplace in Switzerland or you know, England or wherever, you know, and it's phenomenal. You don't need a car.
Yeah, public
So
transit is.
how can we think about developing a system that's all networked together, you know, that gets you here in an eco-friendly way.
Sure.
And then once you're here, you don't need a car. You can, you know, get transportation up to Purgatory or up to Silverton or, you know, out to Mesa Verde or whatever.
Yeah. So a more interconnected, I see the word vibrant transportation system up there. Were you gonna add something else?
Ideally, that might be nice for a different geographic area for the city and one historic radio and have transportation that would be instantaneous like that. But what I've encountered is that people in southwestern Colorado, some of these non-urban areas, they like to have their own horse when they go to town. That's just something that they're used to. So you may have to consider how to work with that issue. Sure. And you know, that might be doing the parking ride. You know, park out somewhere and then have the bus to town. And then maybe you could think about the trolley that used to go down each street. Even there and that. But I do think people would like to have a little horse.
Yeah, so this as part of, it's very American, right? That we rely on our individual transportation. But you know, we talked about culture earlier. In some of our other focus groups today, we tossed around the word value a lot. So is there a way to sort of have a values-based or cultural based, like this is what you do when you come to Durango, and can we get people to use more shared services and use transportation networks? So one, they have to be built, they have to be vibrant, they have to be interconnected. I'm not saying that we don't have that today, but there's room for improvement always when we think about transportation networks. But can we also embed that culturally so that the visitor also has that experience and is more willing to maybe try the transportation network or the transportation solution versus getting back in the car? Yep. We can answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there might be, so like you like to surround yourself with people that think similarly to you, but I think there might be a bigger gap in like values that, you know, maybe we think, or maybe I think. And that might, and I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing, because like, you know, different perspectives and different types of ideas should be be welcomed and
Sure.
are healthy in the place. But that's gonna, I don't know, like, how do you develop a plan while considering all those different values that they exist and like making a place for all of those?
Yeah.
It's challenging.
Great question. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. Wait, oh, we've got 15 minutes left of everybody's time. So I think we only have 2 more questions. There's one more after this. So we've kind of talked about this. I saw climate change pop up on the last slide. So risk to our environmental assets. So we talked about the reason that you chose to come to Durango was natural resources and the environment. What are the risks? What risks do you see to one of the reasons that we all love to be here? Wildfire, drought. Are there other things that come to mind?
Overuse.
Overuse.
Again, I brought up
Being loved
Yosemite
to death.
and, yeah, Smoky Mountain National Park, and places that I used to love.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even want to go back.
So in the things that are coming up related to environmental assets. I was surprised that, quite frankly, I was surprised that nobody put tourism as the first thing. I think there's perceived risk that tourists cause the risk, right? You said overcrowding. There we go. There it is. I'm waiting for it. So I think what this surfaces, right, is one, we have to recognize that there's risks. We can't build a resilient destination if we don't know our risks. I think, as you mentioned earlier, I think the community has done a great job of being sort of climate forward and understanding what our risks are. But knowing that, we play a role here in bringing people to the community. So we've talked about how we bring them in and what we want from them when they're here and how we want them to behave. But, is overcrowding a real issue? Is it something that you see more of? Is that a trend that you've experienced? Is over tourism, overcrowding, or any of those issues prevalent in your day-to-day? When you think about our natural resources and our environment?
Not so much in the day-to-day, but as John said earlier about, when we first come in, they take their ATVs and ripping up the natural environment. I've noticed buddies of mine during the summer we go camp up like almost Quebec area, and just more and more tourists kind of doing that, taking the wheels in there, just ripping apart the natural landscape. I think it also goes back to the education.
Sure.
Which,
Yeah.
And then, from that, it's the bonus that over time, it's been even some spots that showed you years ago.
Yeah.
They just closed them off now. We could try it out.
Yeah. So the issue of having overuse and for lack of a better term, little reinvestment in keeping or preserving or maintaining the natural resource if it's being used to that degree. Second to that, also maybe managing the use itself.
Much of our surrounding area is managed by the U.S. Forest Service or Bureau of Land Management. And they have typically very limited resources. And so, with this, we saw it during COVID that, a lot of people discovered RVs and camping and hiking and that sort of thing, which on the one hand, I think is fabulous. But on the other hand, they're just overusing the resource. And so, working with the people managing those resources, to have the budgets, to have maybe volunteerism that
Sure.
could help support that.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that you bring up is the potential for greater collaboration and alignment and streamlining. Do we know who's working on what? Right, sometimes that's the biggest challenge to understanding how we manage and maintain things. I have to admit, I've never seen dogs on this list.
Oh, yeah.
So dogs are a risk to our natural environment? Are we have a pet issue?
Scoop, boom. Big campaign during right now.
So there's an off leash problem probably too?
Mainly pet waste.
Waste, so it's a waste issue and an off leash issue.
We do have bears in town,
Okay,
and in the surrounding mountains, we have mountain lions and all kinds of stuff like that. And fortunately, in my view, we're about to release our first wolves. So there's all this stuff, you know, that we're trying to live with and not hurt or run away or whatever.
and just out of curiosity, is that dog pet waste issue? And just a question, is that a tourist bringing their dog and behaving badly? Is that because they don't respect the community, or is that a resident problem? Or both?
Just working on Main Street, the proliferation of right now on Main Street from tourists kind of bring their something like that, and very low, like low priority as far as this is their concern.
Sure.
And then also doing
Yeah, so maybe it's not as big of a risk to the environmental asset itself, but it's a risk to the experience. That it degrades the experience because we're not behaving the way we should. Yeah, okay, it's a great. You're gonna say?
Yeah, no, I guess that's correct, as well as, the waste does have like an
Wait,
impact.
of course.
Can spread disease, can release methane into the air, like it's, well.
Yeah, it's good. And maybe we'll go to the last. So big question. Thinking about this planning process, right? So we've talked about what we love about Durango. We've talked about what our priorities are. We've talked about what our challenges might be to implementing whatever comes out of this process. We talked about what our biggest risks are. Knowing this is a city plan, right? So I'm standing up here in front of you as a facilitator, as a third party, responsible for delivering the plan. But ultimately, my recommendations go to the city. So thinking about the destination and managing the destination, what could the city do to be a better partner to the community in this effort? Is there something that you go, in 5 years, if the city is still doing X, Y, or Z, then we really haven't made progress? And there's no bad answer.
Manage pollution.
Okay,
Or again, we're back to environmental impact, so. Denver in particular is a perfect example of air quality issues. They have many days during the summer when their ozone levels are too high.
okay,
So just Durango, I don't think has that problem yet,
sure.
but managing, we've got gold level trout stream right through town.
Mhm.
Managing the pollution in the water, the overfishing, the boating,
Okay.
recreation. It's a lot of fun, but
Yep.
don't throw your beer cans out there,
Mhm.
whatever.
That's a good one. Not dismiss country residents.
Yeah.
So as someone who's from New Jersey, can we more define country for me? Does it count? Okay, I didn't know if we were talking about like not that town, or a little bit on the outskirts, so if we're talking. Yeah. Okay,
I think, and I would add including the ranching communities
Okay.
and
That's what I was going for.
Native American communities and so on and so forth.
part of, what could the city do to be a better partner? You talked about the county. Is there enough collaboration between city and county when it comes to thinking about tourism and destination management? Not sure. Okay,
Seems to be a fair amount of communication,
that's good.
I guess, at
Good.
least for us.
continue to lead on climate, having policy and collective action to address a climate crisis, and the community will support and push for it. City needs to lead the way. So an important part of continuing to be climate forward and being conscious, not just conscious, but proactive related to climate issues. Other folks? Because ultimately, what we want to be able to deliver here, again, we're looking at this through the lens of the destination. So we want to be able to deliver a plan that has strategy, has overarching vision and goals here, but then practically what's the action that can be taken, and how do we want to move things forward?
How innovative are we trying to be? Or are we trying to just look at what people others have done and try to do it best?
Well, I read the earlier today, innovation is one of them, so I think it's
So I think I would say that if you're thinking about what to suggest or issues or challenges or maybe big picture solutions, there's no handcuffs on the concepts at this point.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to drive the climate point home, obviously.
Sure.
I don't think, reading this as, obviously the local community, but like also like the community of just the rest of this region, country, world, I don't know exactly what it's thinking, but tracking the carbon output of visitors, I think would be incredibly innovative and
Yeah.
massive. We could lead the way. That's indeed a better partner to the world community.
Yeah, great point. So we work with we have a partner of ours specifically on the resilience side and sustainability monitoring side. He's actually been in Turkey for the last 2 weeks working on the earthquake situation, but we've worked really hard on a product on a platform through a partner of ours where we're looking at critical success factors related to resilience, climate change, and sustainability. And so the question of how innovative can we get here, I think the sky's the limit because there's global institutions and organizations that are trying to set standards and create consistency in how we define sustainability. The word sustainability is one, way too overused. 2 has been watered down, and 3 is defined differently by everybody differently on Main Street. So by trying to think about innovation, I think we're also thinking about the ways that we can connect the dots for people and how do we actually do that. And so one of the things that when we work with our partner on resiliency and sustainability related projects, we're thinking about climate change and risk. And what is the risk? Can we identify those risks? What are we doing to mitigate those risks? And how do you move between your risk levels? And so it doesn't sound all that special, but tactically understanding that is something that a lot of places can't do right now. And then how do you track it? Back to your earlier point. And one of the things that we really like about the process that we've undertaken in that regard is that there is a dashboard and a sort of visual way to monitor and manage success. And so I think the ability to push in that area is virtually untapped because there's still so much that can be written as to what we want to do forward. Growing and developing healthcare facilities, listening to the community and not just business interests, is a great point. That this isn't necessarily all about trying to drive economic impact, but finding balance. Transportation, we talked about. How do we make sure that it all fits together and has a sustainable impact? Diversify the outreach. It's a great point. So it's something that, as I mentioned in the beginning, if you know that there are folks that should have input into this and they didn't hear about it or they couldn't make it, we want to hear from them. So happy to make sure that they have our contact information so that we can get input into this process. I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. We're very close. So if there are Other things that come to mind for you, after you all wake up tomorrow and think about this riveting conversation. You want to reach out to us and provide any more feedback, we want to have it. So we're going to continue to get stakeholder input. So as I mentioned, we've got some more focus groups tomorrow. We're going to continue to have individual interviews. We're working on the market research, as I mentioned in the beginning. And we'll be presenting some of that to our task force tomorrow to get some initial input from that group. And then really wanting to make sure we have the economic impact and quality of life assessments included before we go any further in developing recommendations. So the develop initial recommendations is the last bullet on the screen, but we're still a ways away from putting pen to paper on any of those things. We want to make sure we've got good input and good feedback into this process. So that's why we really wanted to make sure we heard from folks like yourselves today. So thank you all for coming. We really appreciate your time. And if there are other questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out and have contact information here. I can give it to you as you head out. So thank you again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Got one more to fire off. Can I still do
Good.
it? Yeah, there we go. Okay, here we go.
Thank you.
Well done.
There you go. Yeah, we'll just leave it up. So the next time, please.
Really well done.
Stop.
Yeah.